Hey, good morning. It's great for me to be here with you all today. For those who don't know me, my name is Erik Hallworth. I'm the student pastor. I'd also like to say good morning to those of you who are watching us on the other side of the screen. For those watching us on the other side of the screen, I want to let you know that we can see you now. Pastor Ruth and the media team have set up a new software, and we actually have monitors, and through these monitors, we can see you. So I just want everyone on the other side of the screen to know that as you get dressed this morning. Hey, if you're here with the Hey, if you're new here with us, we do series here at Riverside, which means we take a specific topic and talk about it anywhere of the course between 4 to 6 weeks. And you're really finding us smack dab in the middle of a series that we call 9 Sins That Christians Are Okay With. And what we aim to do in this series, we aim to illuminate parts of our lives that we don't necessarily consider to be sinful, but they actually do, in fact, draw us further from who God is. And for me, I have the tremendous responsibility and privilege to talk to you today about the sin of flattery. You know, a lot of times the way we think about flattery, I think we think about flattery as giving compliments. Flattery is simple manipulation. It is anything, any compliment giving or anything we say, but we have some sort of ulterior motive underneath it. I think one of the paramount examples of flattery today is our election. You have 2 candidates, and these candidates flatter different groups. You have some candidates that flatter unions. You have some candidates that flatter small businesses. You have some candidates that flatter students, some that flatter retirees. But the thing is, underneath their flattery and underneath all of our flattery and any compliment we give is actually the need for approval. For our candidates, they need our approval in the form of votes. And anytime we flatter someone, it always tickles our desire to be approved. So as we start this message, the definition that I really want us to operate under is that flattery is defined when our desire to be approved is greater than our desire to glorify Christ. And for me in my life, my desire to be approved has really permeated almost every single decision in my life. For me, it started with high school. Like a lot of high schoolers, we desire to be cool, and we associate coolness with the clothes we wear. I know we listen to Hillsong, Chris Tomlin, and Bethel in church, but for me, I listened to Jay-Z, Tupac, Biggie Smalls. Those were my boys. So as a result of what I listened to, I was shaped by the culture. And as a sophomore at Monterey Trail, I was obsessed with this thing called tall tees. So much so that I begged my mom to take me and my friend Ashveer to this store called SD Mart. And I remember before we were going there, I actually did chores this weekend, so I had money. And as we drove there, I remember distinctively like, okay, as soon as we get there, I'm going to get this tall tee, I'm going to buy it, and I'm finally going to get the approval. I'm finally going to get the looks from the ladies that I wanted. I'm finally going to get the approval of people on my football team. And so we went there, and I distinctively remember as soon as we got out of the car, I beelined past the bandanas they were selling, and I got to the tall tee section. And I needed a white tee. It absolutely had to be white. So as I was looking through the tall tee section, I was throwing out the grays, finally found a white one in the back of the rack, bought it, drove home. And I remember that Sunday evening, I was like, man, so excited, because I was going to be like, Monday morning, I'll don on this white tall tee, and everything will be fine. Monday morning hits, I ironed my clothes. My mother bought a bottle of spray starch. I must have used half that bottle on that shirt that day. So I was spraying, ironing, put on the tall tee, and as we drove, I have to show you because I actually literally sat like this. I had my seatbelt out because I didn't want the strap to crease my tall tee, so I wanted to keep its crispness, So as soon as we got out, I remember saying bye to my mother, and I had a certain pep in my step, and we walked into high school. The thing is with high school, and the thing is like today, a lot of times what was cool yesterday is not always cool today. And that became very clear to me as at 8 in the morning, I was the only sophomore in a tall tee now. And the rest of the sea of students were not wearing their tall tees. And, I thought to myself, maybe everyone at Riverside doesn't know what a tall tee is. So I went ahead and captured that image. I was the guy on the right. I'm 5'7" on a good day. I might have been the only 5'5" sophomore in there. So that is kind of an example of what I looked like on the right. But the thing is, underneath my desire to be flattered was really tickling my desire for approval. And you know what? The thing is, my desire to be approved didn't go away. It stayed in college. Like many high schoolers, senior year, midway, I had a snap judgment. I realized that high school didn't matter, college mattered. And as I went to college, I remember during my orientation, we were picking classes and picking majors. And I thought to myself, okay, I need to find something that's going to give me two things. So number one, I need to get some sort of money. Because if I have money, then I'll be able to stay current with the fashion trends. And that tall tee fiasco will never happen again. But also if I take something with prestige, I'll be a revered member of my community. My parents should be proud. and different parts of my friends will be impressed. So, in May 2015, I graduated San Francisco State University with a philosophy degree in one hand and a handful of law school acceptance letters on the other. And I distinctively remember as I was walking down at AT&T Park, the chancellor gave me my degree, and I thought to myself, you know what? For the last 4.5 years, my desire to be approved had dominated my career choice, had dominated my education, and had dominated much of my life. And I think on this subject of the need or the desire to be approved, I think honestly we all have that problem. I think for parents, a lot of times we compare our children. Parents, you put your children in advanced sports leagues, you put them in AP classes, you do this in summer camps. And I understand why you do it. You do it because you want your child to stand out. You do it because you want your child to succeed against their peers. Jeez. And in the midst of all this, a lot of times we rarely find parents able to come to church on Sunday with their child. In the midst of running around for these summer camps, a lot of parents can't read 5 minutes of the Bible to their child. For college students and millennials, this is big, the need for flattery, the need for approval. A lot of millennials and college students attend these social justice campaigns. They take pictures at the rallies, they post their stuff on Instagram, and they give the impression like they're down for social justice and they're down for community revitalization. But you never see them doing the heavy lifting of preaching the gospel in marginalized communities. For men, especially young men, I think that a lot of times the need for be approved and the worth rises and falls with the paycheck they bring home. A lot of men operate under the mindset that if I make an X amount of money, that will determine my approval to my wife, to my children, to my community. And if I don't, then I'm just not as good, or nor do I get the approval. I was speaking to a lady while preparing this sermon. She said, Erik, that women don't dress for men, they dress for each other. She said that women compare everything. They compare their hair. They compare their size. They compare their children. They compare their husbands. And the thing is, underneath flattery is, like I said, our desire to be approved. And underneath our desire for approval is really our personal insecurities and fears. And I really think Jesus Christ knew that we would struggle with this, which is why he left the answer today for us in his word. And what we're going to be examining is a real-life account of what it happens and what it looks like when you no longer desire for the approval of many, but you're seeking the approval of one. Our account begins in Daniel chapter 3. For those of us who are new, Daniel is a book in the Old Testament. When you arrive at Daniel, you'll notice that you'll have some big numbers. The big numbers are the chapters, and the little numbers are the verses. So, as you flip to Daniel 3, allow me to set the stage. Our account begins in the 6th century of the Babylonian Empire. Babylonian Empire is the largest empire in the world. It's controlled by King Nebuchadnezzar II. The important thing for us is that the Babylonian Empire at the time controls all of the Middle East, but has captured and controlled all of Jerusalem. The Babylonian Empire did 3 things with the Jews. They killed some. For many, they took and dispersed into the nether regions of the empire. They did this so that it would mitigate the chance of any revolt. But the third thing is, with some of these Jews, some of them with administrative or leadership skills, they took some of the Jews and set them apart to be certain provincial rulers to watch over the affairs of the different parts of the Babylonian Empire. And what's important for us is that our account begins at the height of King Nebuchadnezzar's II's rule. We'll begin our investigation in Daniel 3, verses 4 through 7. And the herald proclaimed aloud, "You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up." You see, already in the beginning do we see the work of flattery. On the one hand, we have King Nebuchadnezzar. This is a man who is a flatterer. This is a man who desires for the approval of another person. So much so that he's demanded for the construction of an image, and then after the demanding for the construction, he's demanded that everyone in his empire worship it, and by extension, worship himself. And as I was preparing for this sermon, I thought to myself, you know what? King Nebuchadnezzar and myself are not that different, but also King Nebuchadnezzar and you are not that different. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are hearing this. Well, Erik, I understand. I need to be approved. I want to be approved by my wife, my husband, my family, my co-workers, but I'm not King Nebuchadnezzar. I've never created a statue or created something for the adoration of somebody. But if so, let me be clear that if you are doing anything or have done anything to get the approval of another person, even slightly more than the approval of God, you are guilty of the same thing King Nebuchadnezzar is, and that is called idolatry. Idolatry is anything that's put above God. And in the case of King Nebuchadnezzar, in the case of flattery, that is a form of idolatry. So I wonder, as we're sitting here, what is the golden image? What is the golden statue that you've set up? What's that thing you are doing or that part of you that you're manufacturing for the desire, for the approval of somebody else? Let's look at the people. Remember verse 7 said, as soon as they heard the music, everyone bowed down. I'm sure right in this congregation as across the screen that there's some of us who are being King Nebuchadnezzar. There's some of us who are doing things to get the approval, but there's another portion of us that are, because of the fear of impending judgment, are refusing to not do anything and be like the people and just submit. Daniel 3, verse 12. But there are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image you have set up. It is at this point that we find our most pivotal point in the story. For Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they find ourselves in the same decision we do. And this decision is, do we choose to please an audience of one, or do we choose to please an audience of many? I talk to a lot of students. A lot of students say that they find themselves in this same tension every single day. For students, a lot of times it's when you became that popular and you're part of that popular friend group. And now that you're part of that popular friend group, you see that that same person is getting bullied and getting made fun of. And now you're stuck in this tension between, okay, do I call out what they're doing? But if I call out what they're doing, I run the risk of being that guy. And I don't ever want to be that guy again. I was speaking to a mother the other day. She said, my daughter was 8. I snapped, and now she's 18. And now she met this friend group, and now I'm stuck in this tension between, do I call out my daughter and tell her what she's doing is not right? But if I do that, I run the risk of destroying the little relationship that I have left with my child. Or do I not, and let her crash and burn and live with the impending guilt of watching my child fail? And for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, this was the decision they were in. They had the entire Babylonian Empire and the most powerful man in the empire, literally, verse 3 guys. And they were stuck with the same decision that we have to make is, do we choose to please an audience of one, or do we choose to please an audience of many? Daniel 3, verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Filled with fury, Nebuchadnezzar is furious. He's indignant. So much so that he demands, bring me those boys. He calls the herald. He says, I want to see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in my face. So the herald naturally brings them, and he asks them once again to his face, is it true that you don't serve the gods that I serve? After this, after hearing that they don't serve the gods, King Nebuchadnezzar gets furious, and he heats up the furnace 7 times more stronger than it is. In addition, he grabs Pastor Philip's size men to tie these men down and throw them in the furnace. Upon throwing them in the furnace, the Bible recounts that the flames were so large that the men who threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in also perished. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are in the same situation in the furnace, literally burning alive. But in verse 24, did we not cast 3 men into the fire? They answered and said to the king, True, O king. He answered and said, But I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of God's. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near the door of the burning fiery furnace. He declared, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. After seeing this, Nebuchadnezzar says that he was astonished. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out, and the Bible recounts that there was not even a single hair on their head that was singed. In addition, it says that their clothes didn't even smell or have the scent of any fire. But what's important is Nebuchadnezzar, after seeing this, is about to utter the most important things he'll ever say, ever in his life, according to Scripture. And those words are found in verse 28 and 29. Verse 28. Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him, and set aside the king's command, and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins, for there is no other God who is able to rescue this way. And this is the victory. The result for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is that they were comforted and they were rescued. And they were able to do this. My hunch is that they were able to do this because they understood that when you see God as God sees you, you need nobody's approval. For Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they didn't need the approval of King Nebuchadnezzar. They didn't need the approval of the Babylonian Empire. But the amazing thing about the God that they serve and that the God we serve is that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because of their faithfulness, God not only saved them from physically impending death, but he also used their lives to show King Nebuchadnezzar the truth of who he is to him. And as a result, King Nebuchadnezzar, after seeing this, made a decree and by extension helped save his entire Babylonian empire by telling Babylonian Empire, you know what? Their God is greater than any other God that we serve. And at this point, after examining the victory displayed by Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they understood this important truth that we Christians forget every day. And the truth is that the bigger God is in our lives, the smaller everything else is. Remember, for the Christian, if you are a Christian here, if you claim to be a follower and you claim to be saved by Jesus Christ, let me reiterate something that we forget all the time. And the truth is that because of the death, the resurrection, and blood of Jesus Christ, there's no need for anybody's approval. There's no need to have any fears because of impending circumstances that are outside of your control, because they're forgiven. Any insecurities that you may have because of past life mistakes or past hang-ups, forgiven. And any sins that you're going to make or you have made or you are making in the search for approval have been forgiven. You see, the worst thing about flattery is this. It's that flattery, more so than any other of the sins we've preached on, and more so than any of the sins we're going to preach on, is that flattery really tickles. Underneath flattery is our need to be approved. And when we live our life with the need to be approved, when we live our life for other people, when we live our life for the approval of our husbands, spouse, family members, your coworkers, what you're doing is you're effectively giving your life to somebody else to live. And you're living the life somebody else has for you. And you're going to miss out on the life that Jesus Christ has for you. And you're going to miss out on the joy that Jesus Christ has for you. Isaiah 51:12 says, I am the one who comforts you. So why shall you fear man? So why shall you fear people who die like the grass? So for the Christian, you will find I have but one application piece for you today. And that piece is this. Like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we need to start to begin to see ourselves as God sees us. And I guarantee you this, if Riverside Wesleyan Church started to do this, if our community started to do this, and our church as a whole started to see the truth of who Jesus Christ was, number one, I wouldn't be preaching up here today. And these entire series wouldn't even be existent. We wouldn't have a problem with fear, because we would be after God first. There wouldn't be a problem with worry, because we'd be after God first. We wouldn't have a problem with consumerism to seek anybody's approval, because we'd be after God. We wouldn't have a problem with approval, nor would we have a problem with flattery. And at this point, Pastor Philip and I have agreed to leave a 45-second to a minute space. And my application piece for you today and this week is I'm going to lead you with this truth that if you're currently doing something for the approval of somebody else, even slightly over, you are currently living a section of your life that is not yours. And you could be missing out on something else that was made specifically for you. And as I lead us out in prayer today, I'm going to ask the Holy Spirit to illuminate what parts of our lives we're being like King Nebuchadnezzar's, what parts of our lives we're seeking for the approval of others, and what parts of our lives we need to be more like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.